When you're beginning to set boundaries in your life, it's a really good idea to uncover some of the myths that you might be operating from. That's the first thing I do when I work with clients is we start to talk about some myths that they might be operating from. I'll ask them, what's getting in the way of setting better boundaries? And they'll say, well, XYZ, and it ends up being a myth. So today I'm bringing you 5 of the most common myths that I dispel with my clients. I thought it would be helpful to you, so let's dive in. Before we review the 5 myths, I really wanted to discuss obligation. This tends to be the underpinning of why we don't set better boundaries for ourselves. So let's talk about obligation. This is the definition I pulled from the dictionary. It's an act or course of action to which a person is morally or legally bound, a duty to commitment. So I have an obligation to her to look after her. And then similar descriptions are duty, commitment, responsibility, moral imperative, a task, a job, a chore, an assignment, a burden, an onus, liability, accountability, requirement, debt, pressure, constraint. When we look to set boundaries, and we're going to go over this in a minute, we can feel guilty. We might feel guilty because we have an obligation to somebody, but we want to be careful because that obligation can also be used against us. We can be guilted into doing things. So I just wanted to bring this up so that you can start to determine how you're setting your boundaries. And really, you want to understand that you're coming at it with self-care in mind and that you are having healthy relationships with others. That's a big deal. So I just wanted to cover that. Let's jump into the myths. All right, we're at the meat and potatoes here. These are the myths. These are the top 5 myths that I go over with my clients. The very first one, if I set boundaries, I'm selfish. I swear this is probably the very first thing that comes out of their mouth when we start talking about better boundaries in their life. This is a myth. You get to decide how to take good care of yourself. Setting boundaries is being honest and truthful with people in your relationships. This one, though, this is the reason why I covered obligation, is because this obligation can undermine this one. You can feel selfish. People can accuse you of being angry for setting boundaries. You might feel guilty for taking better care of yourself. That's why I want you to really discern the difference between healthy obligation and unhealthy obligation. So number 1, setting boundaries. You're not selfish. This is absolutely a myth. Take good care of yourself, my friend. Number 2, boundaries are a sign that people can't rely on me. Again, there comes that guilt again, right? However, when we take good care of ourselves, we are going to be congruent. If you're feeling like people can't rely on you, then there are going to be times when you're going to notice that you're incongruent with your yes. You want to be a full yes when you help people. Because when you're not, when you're stepping up and helping people, even when you don't have the time or energy or resources to help them, this is going to cause you stress. So it's not being honest. People absolutely can rely on you even more when you explain your limits. When you say, I'm at capacity today. You're going to get people who want to run to you and it's their emergency and they need your help, but their urgency is not your emergency. I always love that quote. Number 3, if I set boundaries, I'll hurt others. This is a myth in the way that others are going to be responsible for their emotions around this. So yes, it's true. Some people might feel hurt. This is not your responsibility. There's a difference between uncomfortable and harm, and I want you to know and discern the difference. However, when you do start to set boundaries, you're going to get some pushback, and I discuss this in my Boundary Violations Barrier Blueprint course, which there'll be a link at the bottom in the comments section below. Others may be hurt, and it's not a weapon. Your boundaries are not a weapon to hurt them. You are, again, giving yourself permission to take better care of yourself. So just know that, and then you're going to step away and recognize that you want to be out of that drama triangle, the perpetrator, the rescuer, the victim. So when others are hurt, they're going to claim that they're a victim of your boundaries. And again, here comes the guilt and the obligation. So just notice that pattern. Number 4, if I set boundaries, I might get hurt by others. Well, you have responsibility for your thoughts, your emotions, and your behavior. So when you begin to set boundaries, you might find that others start to pull away. Some won't like it, And this is going to indicate the potential strength in your relationship. Again, remember that starting to set boundaries will change the dynamic in the relationships. You're going to get some pushback, as I just said. However, again, giving yourself permission to set clear boundaries is the most honest way you can be in relationships. It's the most important way that you can build better intimacy and strengthen a relationship, when you are being honest about your wants, your needs, and your desires. The last one, boundaries are permanent. This is a myth because they're actually fluid. You're going to notice that with some people, you maybe gave them too much and then they do things and you're like, oh, okay, I'm going to pull back a little bit on my boundaries. So you might have been too porous with your boundaries. And then you decide you're going to bring it in a little bit. You're going to be a little more rigid with them. You're going to decide how you are creating boundaries, and the optimum is healthy. It's sort of like, rather than erecting a wall or not having a fence around your yard at all, you have a little, say, white picket fence with some roses and other things around it that you allow them to come in. You allow the healthy in and keep the unhealthy out. So it's not a huge wall. It's not rigid. People can get in, but then there is a fence so that not everybody can get in. So again, boundaries are not permanent. They are going to be more fluid. So I hope that gives you some things to think about relating to your own personal boundaries in your life. Here's another great metaphor for setting better boundaries, healthier boundaries, is you are a VIP. You have a very special space that people can come in. You're keeping the unhealthy out and you're giving the key to the VIP room to the healthy. So I always love the metaphors. I want to encourage you to move on to the next video. It's Speak Your Truth scripts. I've given you done for you scripts and what to say when somebody is either pushing your boundaries or violating your boundaries. I've got a bunch of great videos on boundaries in general. So I'm going to put the link to this next video in the comments section below. So make sure that you click on that and keep learning about how to build better boundaries. Thanks for being here.